All right, it's April, but I just realized that I didn't do Blu-ray editions for 2023 because I'm really bad with remembering stuff and really good at procrastinating. So we're just going to quickly whip through that. Let's do it. Come on. Starting us off in January. One second. Brazil by Terry Gilliam. If you like Monty Python, definitely check out Brazil. It's Terry Gilliam is one of the members. He directed The Holy Grail as well, and Brazil is very similar to those two in a much more rich way. Very similar to The Holy Grail and Life of Brian in a more like rich, sort of surreal way. The Brothers Bloom. I like Rian Johnson when he's, not directing Star Wars. Monty Python's Life of Brian. I like that movie. Boyhood by Richard Linklater. Florence Foster Jenkins. Easy A. The Good Suicide Squad. I like that movie a lot. And John Wayne's McQ. Next up in February, we got First Blood, Hereditary, terrifying movie. The Lighthouse, terrifyingly boring and overrated movie. Purple Rain, Blade Runner 2049, The French Connection, Licorice Pizza. I love Paul Thomas Anderson, and he does a great job creating an atmosphere with that movie. Up in the Air, Selma, Richard Jewell, Point Break, Darkman, Fantastic Voyage, The Others, one of my favorites, Birdman, and In Bruges. Then in March, we got My Fair Lady, the first season of Peacemaker. I really like this show. I think James Gunn is doing great with the new DC movies. Killzone, I love Donnie Yen. The Croods, The Searchers, The Wild Bunch, and How the West Was Won. I love The Searchers, and I really like The Wild Bunch. Pain and Gain, I really did not like this movie. One of my favorite action movies, Collateral. And Avatar. Then in April, we got Knowing, Season of the Witch, and the two Ghost Rider movies. Somebody donated a lot of Nick Cage movies that day. None of those movies are good, but I got them because Nick Cage just makes bad movies so fun. The Post, Pillow Talk, Assassination Nation. I might donate this just because it's directed by Sam Levinson, and he's like a total pervert in his movies. He definitely, kids cover your ears. He definitely sexualizes underage girls too much. Like Euphoria, The Idol, and now Assassination Nation is no different. I think he's really just a very bad filmmaker. Lord of War, an actually good Nicolas Cage movie. Love this movie. Delivery Man. Dying of the Light, a movie directed by the man who wrote Taxi Driver and Raging Bull and starring Nicolas Cage. And still, this movie's very bad. Inherent Vice, in my opinion, Paul Thomas Anderson's worst movie by a mile, and Moonrise Kingdom, currently my favorite Wes Anderson movie. All right, in June, we got Silver Linings Playbook. I absolutely hate the director of this movie, David O. Russell, with a burning passion. I think he is a terrible person, but I love this movie. I love this movie so much. I think it's one of the rare times a movie will actually speak to mental health in like a positive light, in like a constructive light. I think I talked about it in my Holdovers review. I really like this movie. I can watch it 100 times and always think it's like the most creative and fun movie ever. Crash. I hate this movie. I think this movie is very bad. Not only are all the characters extremely dumb, but it has arguably objectively actually, the worst stance on racism other than racism is good, which is racism isn't real. It's just unkindness, which is so bad. Brokeback Mountain, I side with The Mask. Brokeback Mountain should have won Best Picture, not Crash. Amelie, this movie's awesome. I love this movie. And it stars Matthew Kassovitz, who I really like as a director. Prisoners, Denis Villeneuve can do no wrong. The Green Knight, I love Dev Patel. I'm happy Monkey Man is coming out, and finally people are like recognizing Dev Patel is awesome. And one of my favorite Coen Brothers movies, No Country for Old Men. All right, so July is when Barnes & Nobles does their 50% off Criterion sale, so I bought so many of those. First off is It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. This isn't a Criterion, but this movie's so long. The Music Man. The Exorcist. Rest in peace, William Friedkin. I think this is your best movie. Maybe Sorcerer, actually. I like Sorcerer a lot. Next is Mishima. This is Mishima, A Life in 4 Chapters. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. This movie is absolutely incredible. It's a biopic of the controversial Japanese author Yukio Mishima, and it's a very unconventional sort of way of making it. I think since 1985, when we made this movie, there's only been one biopic that actually stands up to the quality of Mishima, and it's Schindler's List. I think Schindler's List is a phenomenal movie, and I think Mishima is about on par with that in terms of overall quality of the film. Not in terms of cultural significance, because that Schindler's List clears that by a mile, but in terms of filmmaking expertise, Mishima is an absolutely incredible movie. It is one of my favorites, and I highly urge you to go watch it. It's amazing. Next is Good Morning. Yasujiro Ozu is one of my favorite filmmakers, and this is one of his best films. This movie is a total comfort film. It's about these two boys who take a vow of silence until their parents agree to buy them a television set. And this takes place like right after World War II. And so it's a great film that takes such a simple plot and expands it into this tale of industrialization in Japan and how that is going to affect the traditional lifestyle that they've come to understand. It's really just quite a phenomenal film and also very funny. There's a lot of fart jokes in this movie. Next is Vengeance, one of my favorite movies, if not my favorite movie of 2022. Rumblefish, in the words of the director Francis Ford Coppola himself, that is an art house film for teens, and I agree with that. I think I like Rumblefish better than The Outsiders, actually. Harold and Maude, cry every time at the end of this movie. 101 Dalmatians. This movie is great. One of my favorites. Friday, so funny. Here's an interesting one. Somebody donated an Oscar screener DVD of The Big Short. Technically, this was supposed to be destroyed in, I think, 2016. So, yeah, this is not technically something that should have been donated. But I like this. Donated? What the heck? But I like this movie a lot. This is a really fun movie. I like anything that takes finance or business and makes it entertaining. So like The Social Network, The Wolf of Wall Street is a big one. I like movies that do that. Succession, that's one of my favorite shows that does that. I think Adam McKay, while I don't like him as a writer at all or as a filmmaker, I think The Big Short and Succession, he did well on those. Next is Punch Drunk Love, another Criterion. This is my second favorite movie of all time. I've seen this like 10, 11 times, I think, and I love it more each time. This movie is so good. I think it's Adam Sandler's best movie by far. I think it's Paul Thomas Anderson's best movie by far. I really like Punch Drunk Love. I think it is just a phenomenal movie. My top 5 favorite movies at the moment are Annie Hall at first place, Punch Drunk Love at second, Mishima, A Life in 4 Chapters at third, Old Boy at fourth, and Y Mama Tambien at fifth. I think those are all phenomenal movies, so you should check them out. Next is Blowout on Criterion. This is one of Tarantino's favorite movies, and you can see, if you see it, you can see a lot of similarities between Tarantino's style and De Palma's style in this movie. I like how De Palma sort of creates this seedy atmosphere of the underground porn video production sort of industry, where it's all about this guy who helps record audio for porn movies. And while he's out getting like footage one night for, a film, he accidentally records the audio of a murder. And so it's really just such a suspenseful, gripping movie. I really just love Blowout. Next is Memories of Murder. You might know the director Bong Joon-ho from his film Parasite. Memories of Murder is really good. I think I like Parasite better, but Memories of Murder is a phenomenal movie. Next is Paris, Texas. I love Wim Wenders. I think his film Perfect Days was my second favorite film of last year. And Paris, Texas is just a great film. I really, really admire Paris, Texas. Next is La Haine. This is in my top 10 favorite movies. Straight up, for 2 years, I was like jokingly pretending I hated this movie. I was calling it like the worst thing ever, but deep down I was like, oh my god, I love this movie, and I love this movie. This movie is awesome. If you have the chance, I highly recommend you check it out. It's all about these three boys who are wandering the streets of Paris the day after a riot against police brutality, and we sort of see how this has affected the citizens, all of this misplaced rage and all of this systemic injustice. It was really relevant in 2020, 4 years ago, and I think it's still partly relevant today in many of the aspects it discusses. I think La Haine is just a wonderfully made film. You've got to see it. And finally, for July is Call Me by Your Name. Haven't seen this yet, but I am trying to watch some other Luca Guadagnino movies in preparation for Challengers, because I'm really excited for that. All right, next up is August and September. Fight Club. Can't believe I haven't seen this movie until recently, but I liked it. I thought it was good. Slumdog Millionaire. I have got to see this movie because as I said, I love Dev Patel, and I want to see him in this. Thelma and Louise. Empire Records. The Frank Darabont collection, including The Shawshank Redemption, The Majestic, and The Green Mile. Could you imagine being Frank Darabont, like just starting out directing a bunch of like small TV episodes, and then out of nowhere, somebody's just like, hey, can you direct this Stephen King adaptation? And he hits it out of the park on his first film with The Shawshank Redemption. That really is just incredible to me. Next is Versus, probably the weirdest movie I've ever seen in my life. It is a movie about zombies and the multiverse and samurai and yakuza. This movie's weird, but it's awesome. Sailor Suit and Machine Gun. This movie is also really weird. It's about this girl who basically gets entrusted in leading a yakuza gang. It's weird, but I love that movie. Songwriter Willie Nelson and Chris Christopherson are in this movie. My Boyfriend's Back. I didn't expect to like this movie that much, but I was laughing my butt off the whole movie. This movie is hilarious. True Romance. Quentin Tarantino wrote this movie, and Tony Scott directed it, and you can see both of their touches in this movie a lot. You can see Tarantino with his quick dialogue and his sort of sudden bursts of violence, and you can see Tony Scott really shine when there are really awkward sex scenes being filmed. Yeah, he's really not good at that. But True Romance, I really like True Romance. An Autumn Afternoon. I talked about Good Morning before. This is by the same director, Yasujiro Ozu. Yasujiro Ozu is my favorite filmmaker, and this is my favorite film by him. I think this film is just so incredible. It's his final film, and though he didn't know it would be his final film, it feels like such a great amalgamation of everything he's worked for in his entire career that it works so perfectly as a final film. I think if you're going to see this movie, go watch his other film, Late Spring, first, because then that sort of clears up. There's a lot of parallels between Late Spring and An Autumn Afternoon. They're pretty much the same plot. Some could argue that this is basically a remake. Either way, this film truly is just absolutely incredible. I love Ozu. Past Lives. I talked about it in my last video. This is my third favorite movie of last year. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. This movie rocks. I love this movie. A History of Violence. Probably one of David Cronenberg's most palatable good movies. His most palatable movie is Cosmopolis, but that movie is not good. A History of Violence is very good, and it's also comparatively palatable compared to, like, Videodrome or Naked, which isn't Naked or... Oh, Naked Lunch, sorry. Naked is Mike Lee. Naked Lunch. And finally is Robinson Crusoe on Mars. This movie is also weird as hell. And then in October, we got Across the Universe, great jukebox musical about the Beatles. District 9. Hachi, A Dog's Tale. I cried at the end of this movie. It is so sad. Being John Malkovich, this movie's so weird. Yeah. American Beauty, I hate the main character of this movie, but I also kind of understand what he's going through and relate to him a bit. Not in the, attracted to minors thing, but in how he thinks, in a lot of how he feels. I sort of understand, he gets it even though he's a scumbag. What's next? Yep. Clerks. I love Kevin Smith. He did great with that movie. Almost Famous. This is the 3-hour version, and that seems like a really long time. But I actually like this version a lot better because Cameron Crowe really does a great job at fleshing out all of these characters and creating a more like engaging atmosphere in the movie. And along with that, the 3-hour runtime makes the end feel so much more satisfying because it's a road movie. And so when the end hits, you feel that actual feeling like, oh my god, oh, that was so much fun, but I'm so glad to be home. Like, I think the long runtime suits that movie perfectly. Menace to Society. I love this movie. The opening scene of this movie is one of my favorites. The Wolf of Wall Street. Look how sexy that steelbook is. Oh my gosh. I love this movie. I can watch this movie any day and not even mind that it's 3 hours long. It's really awesome. It's too bad all the people who like it are kind of, pieces of crap. But, or all the people who, worship it are pieces of crap who, think Jordan Belfort is in the right. But yeah, I think The Wolf of Wall Street is really fun. Probably my favorite Scorsese movie. A 4-pack of musicals, including The Bandwagon, Calamity Jane, Kiss Me Kate, and one of my favorite movies of all time, Singin' in the Rain. I love Singin' in the Rain. Spotlight, Big Fish. I really like this movie. I think it's one of Tim Burton's best. I think it might be Tim Burton's best movie. Juno, a total comfort movie for me. Little Shop of Horrors. I don't even like Friday the 13th, but I bought this because this steelbook is so good, and around Halloween time, this is just fun to watch. Phantom Thread. I think this is my second favorite Paul Thomas Anderson movie. I think you got to watch this one time to sort of just to watch it, and you need to watch it a second time to sort of understand the pacing and the characters a lot more, because on the first time I was like, oh, that was a good movie. The second time I was like, wow, this is such a rich film with such interesting characters who really display such a well thought out story. I think this is probably one of Paul Thomas Anderson's most personal films, and all of his films are very personal. I really like Phantom Thread. Next is Ed Wood. Another great Tim Burton movie. I love films about filmmaking, and that's a great one. Revenge of the Nerds, and the good Saw movies. Saw 1, 2, and 3. They're also the only ones I've seen. I probably am not going to watch the other ones. Alright, so in November, there was another Criterion 50% off sale, so I spent even more money. Starting us off is No Bears, an Iranian film by the filmmaker Jafar Panahi. This is such a testament to filmmaking because Jafar Panahi in 2010 was caught by the Iranian government at an unsanctioned protest. And you know how the Iranian government is. But they said, okay, no more filmmaking for you. And they put a filmmaking ban on him. And in that time, he made 6 films. And No Bears was his last one before he finally was caught at the border filming this movie. Because they were filming this at the border to sort of skirt, these regulations. And this film is all about essentially trying to film a film at the border while you have a filmmaking ban on you. It's Jafar Panahi plays the main character as himself, and No Bears really is just quite a phenomenal film. It's really, really impressive how much passion he had to totally go against the law and still, make this amazing film, all these amazing films. I really hope Jafar Panahi is okay. I hope he gets out of, jail soon. Really, it's just, what a filmmaker. Next is Y Tu Mama Tambien. This is one of my favorite movies ever. I said this is my 5th favorite movie, and I stick by that. This movie is awesome. It's about these 2 boys, Julio and Tenoch, who are they just graduated from high school, and now they have all this energy that they're channeling into, they want to do drugs, they want to go goof off with their friends, they want to go swimming all the time, they want to go out and have sex, and it's just, what they end up doing is they plan a road trip to a beach that does not exist called Heaven's Mouth in order to seduce an older woman. And so they take this older woman played by Maribel Verdú, who is absolutely gorgeous in this movie, and they take her to this beach that does not exist, and they try and make her, have sex with her. It sounds really raunchy, but it's actually a very, mature movie that sort of radiates that passion, that energy you feel when you're young. It makes you want to go out and do things. It's honestly, Y Tu Mama Tambien is a movie I relate to so much because it just encapsulates this time in my life that I'm in right now so perfectly that I can just relate to it on so many levels. Y Tu Mama Tambien is really just a fantastic film. I would highly recommend checking it out. Next up is Boy and What We Do in the Shadows. My parents got me these two, so I could finally have all the good Taika Waititi movies on Blu-ray, and now I do. I have Hunt for the Wilder People, I have Thor Ragnarok, I have Jojo Rabbit, and now I have these two. And notice how I said good, because they got this after we saw Next Goal Wins, and that movie sucked. So yeah, I really like these two movies. I think What We Do in the Shadows is really funny. Next is Castaway. Haven't seen it yet, but I want to. American Hustle. You know, I didn't like this movie, but I actually tell people I hate this movie just because it's a David O. Russell film. I talked earlier about how I don't like David O. Russell, and I really don't like David O. Russell as a person. And so the fact that whenever I don't like his movies, I actually hate them. This goes for American Hustle. The same goes for Amsterdam. Amsterdam is an objectively terrible movie. American Hustle is a fine movie. But I hate it solely because David O. Russell directed it. And I'm not going to explain why I hate him, but you can go look it up. He's just generally a terrible person. So next up is Mud and Chronicle. I feel so bad for Josh Trank because he made that movie. He made Chronicle, which is a great film. And then he got put in director jail for going on 9 years now for being forced to make a terrible movie, Fantastic Four. So yeah, I feel really bad for the guy. Next up is Contact, The Ghost in the Shell 4K, which honestly, that's a great thrift. The Intern, just a kind of fun movie. All That Jazz. It's really amazing how much self-hatred Bob Fosse had when he made this movie, because he made this movie essentially about himself, and you can tell when he made this, he just hated himself. He was in such a bad place, and that really makes this such an interesting film to watch. Along with that, the spectacle in this movie is incredible. The set design, the musical pieces, the musical numbers, it's just a great film. Ghost World. I'm kind of saving this for graduation to watch this. I hope it's good. It looks good. Close Up. I love Abbas Kiarostami, and I think this documentary is incredible. It's about this man who pretends to be the filmmaker Moshe Makhmalbaf, and he's not. But he was like, oh, he's reclusive. I'm just going to pretend I'm him so I can get closer to this one family, this rich family. And at first it seems like, oh, he just did that so he could scam them out of their money, so he could take their money. But then when you start analyzing it, you're like, oh, he had this deep love for film. It's all about this, passion for cinema. And I really think Close Up is a phenomenal movie. Next is Late Spring. I talked about Ozu twice. Watch this and then the film we talked about before, An Autumn Afternoon. This film is incredible. It is so good. I think I cried at the end of this movie because it's just that good. The Red Shoes, the spectacle in this movie, the dance numbers, this movie is insane. If you're a fan of Black Swan at all, this is one of them you got to check out. And finally, for November, another Criterion, Taste of Cherry by also Abbas Kiarostami, one of my favorite filmmakers. He is so good in this movie. He directed the hell out of this movie. Taste of Cherry is all about a man who essentially is going around asking people, I'm going to kill myself. Will you please bury me under a cherry tree and I'll pay you? And it's such an interesting meditation on life, how we interact with others, what we leave behind. And as usual, Kiarostami finds a way to mix in his typical, meta storytelling to create such a memorable film. I absolutely adore Taste of Cherry. And finally, we got December. Starting us off, we got Looper, The Boondock Saints, The Rock, one of my favorite Nicolas Cage movies. This movie's awesome. A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. This movie's amazing. I love Tom Hanks as Mr. Rogers. Training Day. I don't even need to say anything about this movie. This movie is just awesome. It is so cool. Do the Right Thing by Spike Lee. Not the biggest fan of this movie. I much prefer Black Klansman or Malcolm X for sure. I love Malcolm X. Let me move these. Get out of my frame. Blu-rays I love and adore. Who's this by? Satyajit Ray is the hero. Satyajit Ray is such a talented director, and I think this is his best film. I think it's better than the Apu trilogy, just because I think Pather Panchali is slow. But The Hero is such an incredible film. It's about this this very famous celebrity on the verge of his first flop film, and so he's taking a train to get an award, and he starts talking with this woman on the train, this journalist who's trying to figure out more about him. I think The Hero is so good. The opening sequence of this movie and how they introduce this main character, this larger-than-life human, is so interesting. The Hero is for sure an incredible film. I can rewatch it 100 times. It is so incredible. I love this film to death. The Witch, awesome movie. This movie's awesome. Edge of 17. This is a total comfort movie for me. This movie is so good. It's so, like, I relate to it so much, and it's so just entertaining to watch. It's funny, it's relatable, it sort of perfectly captures the feeling of being a teen. I love The Edge of 17. You gotta see that movie. I've seen that movie like 20 times or something. I watch it whenever I'm having a bad day. Next is The Fabelmans. This is my favorite movie about filmmaking. This movie, is it? No, actually, this is my second favorite movie about filmmaking. My first is Adaptation, but The Fabelmans is so good. This movie is so incredible. I remember watching it and thinking, I remember growing up wanting to be a filmmaker or be a writer, be something in film. And then after making my first short film, I was like, that was a lot of work. I never want to do that again. And then I watched The Fabelmans and was like, I want to do this for the rest of my life. The Fabelmans is really just incredible. I think it's Steven Spielberg's best film. Next is The Whale. I love this movie. I remember seeing it for the first time, and I'm not Christian, but I noticed a lot of sort of Christian references in this movie. And the more research I did into those, passages I was thinking about, the more I was like, this is a very Christian movie. It's hints a lot towards both the Bible and Moby Dick, which then is inherently has references to the Bible. So overall, The Whale is just an incredible film. It has a lot of religious undertones, and along with that, Brendan Fraser is just incredible in this movie. He's amazing. Next is Game Night. Haven't seen this, but I really want to. I won this in a White Elephant. Tenet. This movie is weird. I still don't fully understand it. The thing I find weird is I have a cousin who I showed her I think I talked about this. I showed her The Great Escape, and she asked me, who are they to the Nazis? And I was like, oh, they're Nazis. And she was like, oh, are they the bad guys? I was like, oh, yeah. And she was like, why? I was like, because they're Nazis. And she was like, yeah, but not all Nazis are bad, right? I was like, nope, all of them are bad. And then I had to explain to her, like, in detail, why the Nazis were objectively the bad guys in everything they were in. And then she sort of understood it. But she understands Tenet fine. That seems so weird to me. Like, how do you understand a Chris Nolan movie before understanding who the bad guys were in World War II? That's mind-baffling to me. But still, I feel like I just dissed my cousin. No, I love my cousin. She's the best. And I kind of want to watch Tenet now. Next is American Gangster. This movie is so good. I love Denzel in this movie. He's so amazing in this movie. I think this is maybe my favorite Denzel performance. I like Training Day a lot, but he's so good in this movie. And Russell Crowe also is really good. This is definitely a good Ridley Scott movie. One of his better movies, because, sometimes he misses. And then finally, we got Kiki's Delivery Service. I love how imaginative Hayao Miyazaki is. I think this is definitely a great film. One of my favorites by Hayao Miyazaki. Well, that's just about going to do it for my very late 2023 Blu-ray editions. Before you leave, why don't you tell me, what are your top 3 favorite movies I went over? My top 3 were Punch Drunk Love, Mishima, A Life in 4 Chapters, and Y Tu Mama Tambien. If you can't think of any that you really liked or you don't know, give me a movie recommendation. Tell me a movie you think I'd like, and then I'll tell you a movie I think you would like. After you tell me about that, you can head on out. Stay safe and watch good movies. Bye!